cameras, and welcome everyone to another Sunday night edition of Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. We are back on the air. We had some interesting things going on last Wednesday and Thursday. For those of you who follow my Thursday night show over on Twitch, you guys know that we had a major foobar hit the OBS computer system that we use to transmit this show and the Thursday night show. And I had to kill the program, reboot it, restart it, and basically redo everything. So graphics, everything that you've known and watched for the last couple of years, we had to scrub and start again. We had some interesting problems with the computer and the interface, and so we had to start at square one. But since I have not heard from my executive producer, is outside the studio or calling me from the other studio, we are here at the library at Banfield, and we are ready to start another new book today. I'm excited by this. Nice, fun adventure to get the summer rolling, keep the summer rolling. We have another one of the really good Tom Swift book series. We are going to be doing tonight Tom Swift and the Visitor from Planet X. Now, if you guys get a chance, please remember to both on Twitch and YouTube, please remember to be kind and like and subscribe. It's like a fire in my soul. Kind of cool graphic. Hope you guys like that. I worked on that for a while. Now to get something different and unique for the like and subscribe. I think we'll get started. We have 4 chapters to get through tonight. 4 chapters each night for the next few weeks. So let's get started with Tom Swift and the Visitor from Planet X. Chapter 1, The Earthquake. Tom, we're having a problem with the gyrostabilizer, said Mark Faber, gray-haired president of Faber Electronics Company. Hope you can find out what's wrong. The 18-year-old inventor accepted the challenge with a smile. I'll be glad to, sir, replied. Bud Barkley, the dark-haired young flyer and Tom Swift's closest friend, chuckled. If anyone can get the bugs out of your new invention, Genius Boy here will do it. The two boys followed Mr. Faber and his engineers into a wooden building which was tightly guarded. Inside, a secret rocket telemetry device was mounted on its test stand. As you know, Tom, Mr. Faber began, the usual conditions of the rocket will be... He broke off with a gasp of astonishment as the whole building suddenly began to shake. Good grief, Bud exclaimed. This isn't part of your test routine, is it? His question was drowned out by the cries of alarm and the sound of cracking glass. The walls and the roof were shuddering and creaking, and the concrete was heaving under their feet. Look out! The test stand's breaking loose, Tom warned. Mr. Faber and 2 of the men tried frantically to brace the heavy equipment stand which held the telemetry device. Another engineer rushed toward the door to see what was happening outside. Before he could reach it, another shock knocked them all off their feet. Electronic equipment cascaded from the wall shelves, and heavy-duty chain hoist came loose from the overhead track, plunging into the floor with a terrifying crash. An earthquake, Tom gasped. Bud, meanwhile, clawed at a handhold on a wire screen enclosing an air compressor and pulled himself to his feet. But the next moment, a third, more violent tremor rocked the building, knocking him over. The roof! It's caving in, he heard someone scream. As his eyes flashed upward in panic, Bud caught a brief glimpse of a ponderous test stand with a priceless telemetry tilting to one side. An instant later, it crashed over, pinning Mark Faber beneath it. Bud threw his arms to protect him, but too late. A falling beam caught him on the back of the head, and the young flyer blacked out. For minutes, no one stirred among the wreckage. Then Tom, who had been stunned by some falling debris, raised himself to a sitting position. Good night. Tom's eyes focused in horror on the wreckage enveloped by the still billowing dust. The sky was visible through several gaping holes in the roof, which was sagging dangerously on its supporting trusses. Only 2/3 of the walls were still standing. Suddenly, Tom stiffened in fear. Bud! The young inventor had just noticed his friend lying pinned beneath a heavy beam nearby. Was he still breathing? Disregarding his own injuries, Tom hastily freed himself from the debris and groped his way to Bud's side. With a desperate heave, he shoved the beam away and cradled Bud's head in his arms. His friend's eyelids flickered. Are you all right? Tom asked fearfully. The answer came in a groan. Oh, wow, what hit me? You got conked by falling timber, or grazed at least, Tom added thankfully. If that beam had landed square on your noggin, even a rock head like yours couldn't have survived. Bud managed a grin. We're grown tough out in California where I come from, he joked. Somewhat shakily, Bud got to his feet with Tom's assistance. Both boys were heartsick as they surveyed the damaged laboratory, wondering where to begin rescue operations. It was a quake, Bud stated grimly. He had heard about the great San Francisco earthquake from his grandfather, and no doubt about the nature of tremors. Just then, Tom glimpsed a body protruding from underneath the wreckage of the telemetry device. Mr. Faber, he gasped. The two boys scrambled through the clutter of the debris towards the spot where the test stand had been erected. Bud seized a slender steel I-beam and managed to pry up the wreckage while Tom carefully extricated Mr. Faber. The scientist seemed to be badly injured. We better not try to move him, Tom decided. We'll get an ambulance. Of the 4 other company engineers, 2 were now steering, partially conscious. The boys found a first aid cabinet and gave what help they could to them and 2 other men. Then Tom taped a bandage on Bud's scalp wound. Let's see if we can find a telephone and call a local hospital, Tom said. Right, Bud responded. They picked up their way through the wreckage and emerged on a scene of frightful destruction. The main plant building of Faber Electronics had been partially demolished by the quake. Power lines were down and an outlying storage shed was ablaze. Dazed and panic-stricken survivors were wandering around aimlessly or rushing about to assist the injured. Good thing the main shift of workers knocked off before this happened, Bud observed with a shudder. There would have been a lot more casualties. Excuse me. Look, Tom pointed to a huge crevasse, right where we landed our whirling duck. The boys exchanged rueful glances as they realized the craft that brought them to Faber Electronics, one of Tom's unique helijets, had been swallowed up in a gaping chasm. No use fussing about it now, Tom said. Come on, Bud, let's see about getting help for Mr. Faber. Despite the chaotic confusion, the boys managed to locate the plant superintendent, a harried, middle-aged man named Simpkins, who was doing his best to restore order. Simpkins, who had not been injured, informed them that electricians were rigging an emergency telephone line in order to get through the nearby town of Harkness. Mr. Faber is badly injured, Tom said. Why not send a car? It's only a few miles away, isn't it? I'll send the plant nurse to him, Simpkins said. As for going to town, take a look at the parking lot. He pointed with a jerk of his thumb. The cars in the lot had been smashed into junk by bricks from falling walls of one of the buildings. And the only truck we have available was in the burning shed, the superintendent added bitterly. Tough break, Tom sympathized. Any way we want to help, got a job for us? Simpkins was only too glad to put Tom's quick mind and keen technical know-how to use. Within minutes, Tom was in charge of clearing away rubble and extricating anyone who might be trapped inside the buildings. Bud organized a firefighting crew to keep the blaze from the shed from spreading. The telephone line was soon repaired, and a steady stream of rescue vehicles began arriving from Harkness. Fire trucks, 3 ambulances, and private cars driven by volunteers. 2 hours later, there was nothing more Tom and Bud could do at the disaster scene, and they hitched a ride into Harkness. The town had suffered some damage, though only slightly compared to the destruction at the plant. The center of the quake was right under Faber Electronics, Tom remarked. From a pay telephone, he called Swift Enterprises in Shopton. This was where the experimental station where he and his father developed their amazing inventions. Tom asked the operators to send a helicopter immediately to pick them up. He also called home and spoke to his sister Sandra. What a relief, Sandy said. We heard a bulletin about the quake over the radio. Don't worry, sis. Tell Mom and Dad that we're okay, Tom said. We'll be home in jiffy, with big appetites. The helicopter arrived within 20 minutes at the place Tom named. After landing at the Enterprises, the boys drove to the pleasant, shade-treated Swift home on the outskirts of town. Mrs. Swift, a slender, petite woman, tried not to show concern when she saw the boys bruised and disheveled. I'm so thankful you both safe, she murmured. Blonde, blue-eyed Sandy, who was a year younger than Tom, had invited her friend Phil Snooten to the home for dinner. Phil, a pretty dark-haired girl, was the daughter of Mr. Swift's longtime friend and business associate, Uncle Ned Newton. The two girls were as much upset as Tom's mother. Tom laughed. We're not stretcher cases, he said. Why, one of the ambulance doctors checked us out. Bud groaned. Why did you have to go and spoil it? He complained jokingly. I was all set for Sandy's cool, soothing touch on my fevered brow. Mr. Swift came into the living room just then and told Tom how worried Mrs. Swift and Sandy had been. I tried to assure them that you and Bud could take care of themselves in any crisis. He smiled guiltily as he added, but I must admit, I was more than a little concerned myself. Tom grinned. The resemblance between him and his father was very evident. Both had the same clear-cut features, the deep-set blue eyes, although Tom Jr. was lankier and taller. The boys had showered and changed their clothes. Mrs. Swift served them a delicious hot meal. As they ate, Mr. Swift managed with some difficulty to get a call through to Harkness Hospital. His face was grave when he hung up. Mark Faber is not expected to live, the elder inventor reported. A pity. He's a great scientist. Tom nodded unhappily. Sandy, to her brother's mind, take her mind off the disaster, said, Dad, tell Tom and Bud about the visitor who's coming. A visitor? Tom looked at his father. From another planet, Mr. Swift revealed. Both boys were amazed and excited. Wow, Bud gasped. Male or female? Human or animal? Mr. Swift's eyes twinkled. None of those, he replied, as the boys stared mystified. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Hitchhiker. Tom and Bud were bursting with curiosity. Although the Swifts had been in radio contact with creatures from outer space for many months, this was the most exciting news yet. On one occasion, the unknown beings had moved a small asteroid, the phantom satellite Nestria, into orbit around the Earth. Later, they had sent strange samples of life to their planet aboard an orbiting missile to be studied by the Swifts. They had also helped Tom, Bud, and Mr. Swift a number of times where their lives were at stake while on daring voyages beyond the Earth. What was their latest invention? Intention. The telephone rang, and Sandy went to answer it. For Pete's sake, Dad, Tom pleaded, don't keep us in suspense. Who or what is this visitor? Mr. Swift smiled at the boy's baffled expression. The fact is that a message came through today that... He was interrupted by Sandy, who came to the door. The phone call's for you, Dad. Long distance from Washington. Bud groaned as Mr. Swift went off to take the call. It's a conspiracy, Bud said. Everyone's ganging up on us to keep us from finding out that mysterious visitor. Tom grinned. We lasted through an earthquake this afternoon, pal, he said, consoling. I guess we can last through a phone call. Inwardly, Tom was as impatient as Bud was to the exact nature of the message. Several months ago, the space creatures had sent their first communication in the form of mathematical symbols carved on the back of a missile which had landed on the grounds of Swift Enterprises. Tom and his father had decoded the symbols and beamed out a reply over a powerful radio transmitter. Later messages had been picked up by a radio telescope and converted to appear as symbols on an oscilloscope screen. Sandy must know what it's all about, Bud broke in. She's the one who first mentioned the visitor. Of course I know, Sandy said mysteriously. So does Mother, and so does Phil. But don't think that we're going to give it away, she added teasingly. Tom and Bud cajoled the two girls and Mrs. Swift for the further information. But Sandy and Phil only shook their heads, obviously enjoying the situation. At last we're getting back at them for the way they've neglected us, Phil said, her brown eyes sparkling with laughter. Come on, Mother, Tom said. Be a sport. You tell us. But Mrs. Swift shook her head. I'm sorry, Tom, she demurred gently, but I think the girls are right. I'll say this much, though, she relented. It will be the biggest challenge that Tom Swift Jr. and Sr. have ever faced. Whew, Bud remarked as the two boys glanced at each other. That must mean it's plenty big news. Oh, sorry, guys. It would have to be, Skipper, to have top all the other jobs you and your dad have taken on. Conquering outer space, probing the ocean's secrets, drilling to the Earth's core, these were only a few of Tom Swift's many exciting exploits. In his first adventure, Tom and his flying lab had gone to South America to fend off a gang of rebels seeking valuable radioactive ore deposit. In his most recent challenge, Tom had defied the threats of Asian killers, determined to ferret out the secret of Swift's latest space research. As the two boys silently recalled the exciting events of the past months, Mr. Swift returned to the living room. Bud and Tom leaned forward in their chairs. Well, boys, Mr. Swift said, as I started to tell you, the space receiver picked up a message today from our unknown planetary friends. This message informed us that they are sending a visitor to Earth, a visitor consisting of pure energy. Energy? Tom was startled. I don't get it, Dad. Frankly, I don't quite understand it myself, Tom Sr. confessed. The message didn't explain how or in what form the energy would arrive, but at any rate, they wanted us to construct some sort of container for it. The elder scientist paused thoughtfully. In my opinion, the energy they speak of must be of some sort of invisible brain. The symbols were rather difficult to decode, but apparently our job will be just to construct a device through which the energy will be able to receive impressions of what life is like here on Earth, and also to communicate its own responses to us. Tom sat bolt right up. Dad, this is terrific news, he exclaimed. If we're able to make this energy or brain communicate, it may be able to tell us what the space people are like. Mr. Swift nodded, his own eyes blazing with as much excitement as Tom's were. Bud, too, was deeply impressed by it, but could not resist quipping, what sort of body will you give it? How about some beautiful and super intelligent space girl for me to date? Nothing doing, Sandy retorted mischievously. I insist on a handsome young man who has time to take two nice Earth girls out on dates. Ouch. Bud pretended to wince. I really left myself wide open for that one. Mrs. Swift put in, Goodness, might it get out of control and rather overpowering? Suppose it went berserk. Rather an unpleasant possibility, Mr. Swift agreed, smiling wryly. But I trust our space friends won't let that happen. Both he and Tom became thoughtful as they discussed the problem. The energy will arrive in 2 weeks, Mr. Swift added. Unfortunately, that phone call was a request I got to Washington on urgent government business. So you may have to take over and work on a solution on your own, Tom. It was a sobering thought to the young inventor. You're right, Mother. This is a terrific challenge. Soon afterward, the little gathering broke up. Bud, who had left his own convertible at the Swifts that morning, offered to drop Phil at her home. Tom awoke the next morning, refreshed by a good night's sleep. After a hearty breakfast of bacon and eggs, he drove off to Enterprises in his low-slung silver sports car. Think I'll listen to the news, Tom thought as they switched on the dashboard radio. A moment later, the announcer's voice came over the loudspeaker. Casualties from yesterday's disastrous earthquake now total 31 injured, the announcer reported. Most of these employees of the Faber Electronics plant, and 4 are in critical condition. There is one note of cheer, however. At last report, Mark Faber, the brilliant president of the company, is now expected to recover. Tom gave a thankful sigh of relief. The announcer continued. Their nearby town of Harkness was only slightly damaged, but the plant itself was almost totally demolished. No estimate of the losses will be released, but it will certainly run into millions of dollars, including some high-secret defense items which were being developed at the plant. Scientists are puzzled by the severity of the quake in what is considered a dead area. For the first time, Tom, too, was struck by this curious aspect of the disaster. So far as he knew, no serious tremors had ever been reported within hundreds of miles of the region. He was mulling over the matter as he drove along the lonely wooded area, not far from Lake Carlpe. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted as a man stepped out among the trees, headed, and gestured with his thumb for a ride. Sorry, mister, Tom reflected, but I've had trouble with hitchhikers before. He shook his head to let the man know that he didn't intend to stop. To the young inventor's amazement, the pedestrian deliberately stepped onto the road, squarely in the path of Tom's oncoming car. Tom jammed on the brakes, and the silver sports car screeched to a stop. Only the quick twist of the wheel had prevented an accident. Somewhat angrily, Tom exclaimed, "What's the big idea, mister? Don't you realize you might have been—" "Shut up," the stranger snarled. An instant, the man had yanked open the door and climbed in beside Tom. "Take me to the grounds of the Swift Enterprise," he commanded in a foreign accent. "And no tricks, or you'll regret it." Chapter 3. Report from Interpol. Tom, astonished, stared at the stranger. "Who are you?" the young inventor demanded. "Never mind who I am, just do as I say." By this time, Tom had recovered from his surprise and coolly sized up the enemy. The man was about 30 years old, with close-cropped black hair, steely eyes glint in lean, hard-jawed face. Tom wondered, should I risk a fight, or is he armed? As if in an answer, the stranger growled, "I gave you an order, my friend. Don't press your luck. Get going." As he spoke, the man thrust one hand into his coat pocket, and Tom felt something hard poke his ribs. The young inventor drove on, but proceeded slowly. He wanted time to think. Presently, Swift Enterprises, enclosed in a high wall, came into view. Tom's brain was working fast. At last he decided on a ruse. He would head for the main gate, get out and use his electronic key without waiting for the guard to admit him. At the same time, he would press a secret warning bell to alert Swift security forces. But the stranger seemed to read his thoughts. As Tom started to turn towards the main gate, the passenger snapped, Go to the private gate which you and your father use. And if I refuse, again the hard object poked into his ribs, you'll be what you call this country a dead duck, the stranger warned. I will then let myself in with your key. Tight-lipped, Tom drove on another half-mile, then turned into a private gate. The man got out with him as Tom walked up to the gate and beamed his electronic key at the hidden mechanism. Instantly, the gate swung open, then closed again automatically after the gate passed through. Tom parked in his usual spot. The stranger kept his hand in his pocket, still covering Tom, but glancing around cautiously. The sprawling experimental station was a vast, 4-mile square area with a cluster of gleaming modern laboratory buildings and workshops. In the distance, a tall, glassed-in control tower overlooked Enterprise's long runways for their jet planes. Suddenly, the stranger stiffened. A paunchy, bow-legged figure topped in a white Texas sombrero was coming straight towards him. Tom's heart gave a leap of hope. The man was Chow Winkler, formerly a chuck wagon cook, now head chief for the Swift's expeditions. "Hi, boss," Chow bellowed in his foghorn voice. As usual, he was wearing a gaudy cowboy shirt. "Who's the new buckaroo?" the cook added, squinting at the stranger with open friendly. "Why, actually, I don't know his name yet, but he's looking for a job," Tom replied. Turning to the stranger, he added, "What is your name, mister?" The stranger glared at Tom to Chow, as if not certain what to answer. Chow's eyes narrowed. He had detected something strange in the way Tom addressed the fellow as Mister, and also noticed how the man had kept one hand in his pocket. Looking to Tom for a lead, Chow suddenly noticed a young inventor make a quick thumbs-up gesture. "My name is..." The man's voice fell to a mumble, obscuring a few syllables. "Frankly, I'm not sure if I desire a job here, but being an engineer, I thought perhaps..." The man's gaze switched back to Tom, and in an instant, Chow jumped the intruder. With surprised agility for his rotund bulk, the cook bore down on him and let fly a gnarled fist to the stranger's jaw. Tom followed up like lightning, grabbing the man's wrist and yanking his hand out of his pocket. He was clutching a snub-nosed automatic. Tom twisted it from his grasp, and as the man landed, writhing on the hard ground, Chow quickly pinned his other arm and drove a knee into the man's solar plexus. "Just lie quiet now, you varmint, or you may get yourself roughed up a bit," Chow warned. Then he added, "Who is he, Tom?" "Search me. He stopped my car on the road and forced me to drive him in through the private gate. Boy, was I ever glad to see you, old-timer." Tom emptied out the clips of shells. Then he searched the stranger while Chow continued to hold him down. The man carried no wallet, papers, or other means of identification. "Brand my tumbleweed salad," Chow grumbled. "He sure wasn't taking no chance on the people finding out who he is, which proves he's some sort of crooked cowpoke. Honest ones ain't feared of showing their own brand." The man muttered something angrily in foreign tongue. Chow merely pressed down harder on his knee. "What'll we do with him, boss?" "Let him up, Chow," Tom said. "Security should be here any second." Even as he spoke, Tom glimpsed a jeep speeding towards them in the distance. The young inventor knew what had happened. Since the stranger did not have the special electronic wrist amulet worn by all Swift employees, his presence had automatically shown up on the master radar scope. The security guard was coming to investigate. As Chow released the man, he got to his feet slowly. Then, without warning, he suddenly butted the cook square in the stomach. Chow was knocked sprawling. Before Tom could counter the surprise attack, the man's fist cracked against his cheekbone. Tom, though stunned, lashed out. More punches flew back and forth. Tom landed a stinger blow to the opponent's midriff and took the punishing one himself. Suddenly, Tom felt the stranger's hand clawing at his pocket for the key to the gate. With all his wiry strength, Tom locked his arms around the man and wrestled him to the ground. The stranger fought like a tiger, but a second later, a jeep screeched to the stop. 3 security guards, led by stocky Phil Radnor, leaped out. Within moments, they had the man subdued. Tom quickly briefed the security men on what had happened. "All right, mister, start talking," snapped Radnor, the head of security. The man only replied with a scowl of rage. "Okay, take him away till he cools off," Tom ordered. Disheveled and still panting, the man was bundled into the jeep and driven off to the security building. Tom arrived there by motor scooter several minutes later. Harlan Ames, the slim, dark-haired security chief of Enterprise, had taken charge of the case, and the prisoner was now being fingerprinted and photographed. "Any leads?" Tom inquired. Ames shook his head. "He won't talk. We've nothing on him in our files. His clothes have no tags or laundry marks, but I say they're a foreign make." Tom nodded. "He's definitely foreign." He spoke with an accent, and he also muttered something at Chow. I didn't catch it, but it certainly wasn't English. Ames frowned. "I don't like the looks of this, Skipper. He may be a spy." "Have you notified the police?" Tom asked. "Right. Also the FBI. They're on their way right now to pick him up. Maybe they'll be able to worm something out of him." Tom spent the morning in routine work in the big double office, which he shared with his father at Enterprise, Maine's building. It was equipped with 2 large modern desks, deep pile carpeting, 2 roomy leather chairs. Each of the 2 inventors had their own drawing board, designed to swing out from the wall at the press of a button. Small-scale models of some of their most famous inventions were also placed about this office, including a silver and red replica of Tom's first rocket ship, the Star Spear, a blue plastic model of the Jet Marine, which he had used and fought a band of undersea pirates, and also a gleaming silvery model of Tom's latest unique spacecraft, the Cosmic Sailor. Because of his father's absence in Washington, the burden of administrating the vast experimental station now fell on Tom's youthful shoulders. Telephone calls, letters, and other detailed work occupied him until noon. Chow broke in, bringing a lunch tray with milk, hot chicken sandwich, and a chocolate eclair. Tom ate hungrily. "Kind of peps up the old supercharger, eh?" said Chow, lingering to chat. "Sure does." "Well, just remember that I ain't go messing any meals, or sleep either," Chow advised as he gathered up the trays. "A brainy young hombre like you needs plenty of rest and vitamins to keep from burning himself out." "I'll remember that," Tom grinned affectionately as the leathery-faced old Texan took his leave. The Swifts had met Chow when they were on an atomic research expedition in the Southwest. Chow had become so attached to Tom that he had returned to Shopton with the Swifts as a permanent employee. Soon after Chow left the office, the telephone rang. Tom took the call and had just finished talking with Arlen Hames when Bud came strolling in. "Any more news on that nut who jumped you this morning?" the young flyer asked. "Ames told me about it." "Not yet, but there may be soon," Tom said. "Harlan just phoned, and he said that he had a call from Washington asking us to stand by the video phone at 1:30 sharp." Ames arrived in person shortly before the scheduled time. Moments later, a red signal flashed on the control board of the Swift's private TV network. Tom flicked on the private video phone, and two men appeared on the screen. One was Blake, the Swift's Washington, D.C. telecaster. He spoke to another man, a calm-faced, balding individual in a dark suit. "This is John Thurston of the Central Intelligence Agency, Tom," Blake said. He thought it might be better to discuss this with you face to face. Bud, Tom, and Ames were also visible to the pair in Washington. "Glad to know you, sir," Tom said and introduced his companions. "We've identified the man who you captured this morning," Thurston began. "He's in the United States on a French passport under the name of Jacques Renard. But we've just learned from International Police Organization that he's actually a Bulgarian. His name was Samson Narko." Tom and Ames exchanged a startled glance. In the past, certain Bulgarian factions had been responsible for some of the most fiendish plots ever perpetrated against the Swifts. "Unfortunately, that's not all," Thurston went on. "Interpol believes Narco is also a member of the same rebel outfit with whom you've had trouble before." Tom was dismayed by this news. "I sure thought that group had been smashed," he said. Soon after Tom had balked their attempts to seize satellite Nestria, the rebel ringleaders had reportedly been arrested and tried for treason. "It now appears," Thurston explained, "that only one segment was quelled. Other members of the anti-government movement are active again and are said to be strongly organized." The CIA man related even more sinister news. It was suspected that a larger nation, by aiding the rebels, was planning a coup to take over Bulgaria. They had already subverted various government agencies and were sending their own professors to staff the Bulgarian technical schools. It was all part of their insidious fifth column pattern. "Many top Bulgarian officials have not joined the plotters," Thurston added, "and it's now becoming very difficult to tell for anyone to enter or leave the country." Ames asked for information on any rebel sympathizers known to be in the United States. Thurston was able to tell him very little. "We keep strict tabs, of course, on all Bulgarians entering the country," Thurston explained. "But even though we screen them carefully, a rebel agent like Narco may slip in, usually on a stolen or fake passport." When the telecast ended, Tom, Bud, and Ames discussed the news grimly. "What if Narco has pals working with him?" Bud conjectured. "If he does," Tom said, "they may try carrying through Narco's mission. I'll station extra guards around the outer wall on 24-hour alert," Ames promised. Tom approved this measure wholeheartedly, but the purpose of Narco's secret mission remained a mystery. Why had he tried to force his way into Enterprise? What was he after? There was little hope of resolving these questions, since the United States intelligence had learned of the rebel movement itself only within the last few days. Thurston had asked Tom and his companions to treat the information as confidential. "I'd better get back to work," Tom said after Bud and Ames had left the office. Tom sat down at his drawing board and began to sketch out some rough ideas for a vehicle to house the brain energy from space. Tom wondered if the brain would be able to perform actions by itself, given the proper mechanical output devices, or would it have to help it function via electronic computer to digest incoming information or stimuli and then respond through servo controls. The problem was baffling and complex that Tom became completely oblivious to the passage of time. He sketched out the plan after plan, only to crumble and discard each one. Suddenly, a disturbing thought jarred the young inventor out of his concentration. Perhaps the Bulgarian rebel scientists had now figured out how to decode the radio messages from the Swift's space friends. If so, when the brain energy was launched toward Earth, they may have to divert it to their own receiving setup. Chapter 4. Another tremor. Tom was appalled at this new danger. Shoving his drawing board back into the wall slot, the young inventor hurried to his desk and made a number of phone calls. Within minutes, a group of 5 of his most trusted associates had assembled in Tom's office. First to arrive was Bud Barkley, Ames and George Dilling, the Swift's communication chief. They were joined moments later by Hank Sterling, the square-jawed chief engineer and troubleshooter of Enterprises, and Arvid Hansen. Hansen, a hulking 6-footer, made all the delicate scale models of Tom Jr.'s and Tom Sr.'s inventions. He was not only an expert craftsman, but like all the Swift's key men, a trained aircraft and space pilot as well. "What's up, Skipper?" Bud asked. "I guess you might call this a council of war," Tom replied. Tom divulged the fears that the Brugerian scientists might hijack the brain energy to be sent from Planet X, home of the Swift's unknown space friends. "Bud, you recall your mother's remarks last night about the danger that this energy may prove overwhelmingly powerful?" Tom went on. "Well, just suppose that our Brugerian pals fitted it into a robot form and then turn it loose against us or our friends in other countries." Bud gave an odd whistle. "Boy, a thing like that might make an even powerful missile look like a toy. Even if the brain energy proved too small to be harnessed for destructive purposes," Tom went on, "it might turn out to possess superintelligence. Gifted with all the scientific know-how of the space people, it might reveal those secrets to the Brugerians. They might learn how to construct weapons or spacecraft powerful enough to conquer the free world," Tom ended. His listeners were grim-faced at the thought. "I'd say that it's far worse danger than any chance of their coming up with a robot monster," Ames said. "Ditto," Hansen agreed. "I think so too," Tom replied. "In any case, it's up to us to make sure that Brugerians don't switch that energy off course before it lands here." "Think their scientists are capable of such stunt?" George Dillings inquired. Tom shrugged. "They're certainly far advanced in fields of rocket guidance and telemetry, but actually we just don't know." Hank Sterling glanced hopefully at the young inventor. "Got any ideas, Skipper?" he asked. Tom drummed a pencil on the table thoughtfully before replying. "Maybe our best bet is to first find out all we can about the lines of research on which they're concentrating. That might be the tip-off." After a thorough discussion, it was decided that Ames and Dilling would fly to Washington at once and talk to the FBI and Central Intelligence. Their job would be to garner and piece together every scrap of information on Brugerian scientists accomplished. "Let us know as soon as you get a general picture," Tom said. Ames and Dilling promised to do so, and then the meeting broke up. Feeling somewhat reassured, now that a definitive plan of action had been decided upon, Tom resumed work on his sketches. Although both the problem and the solution were still hazy in his mind, a few ideas began to take shape. A radio antenna would certainly be needed to receive or transmit signals at the distance, and replatrons units would give the brain a way to exert force when it wanted to react. These were devices which Tom had invented to produce a repulsion force ray. He had used the principle both in air and spaceflight. A powerful plant might be also needed to generate additional energy in case the brain's own energy was very small. Lastly, There would have to be control system for either use by the brain itself or by its human operators. After an hour of work at top speed, Tom was rather pleased with one rough sketch. He was mulling it over when Chow Winkler and Bud Barkley wandered into the office. Both were impressed when Tom explained the sketch. Chow stared at it, ogle eyed at the thought of such a contraption coming to life. So that's the old think box, eh? He muttered. Tom laughed. Good name, Chow. All three were startled as a voice suddenly broke over the wall intercom. It was the operator on duty at the plant's communications center. Turn on your TV, Skipper, the operator suggested. We've just had news of a bulletin that an earthquake tremor has been felt over in Medfield. There's a big plant there that makes rocket cone noses. A mobile TV crew's been rushed to the scene in a helicopter that they're trying to pick up the action with a television camera. Good night. Another quake? Bud gasped. Tom had already rushed to the video phone. Flicking it on, he switched to a commercial channel. Soon a picture appeared on the screen. It was a panoramic shot of landscape, evidently viewed from a hovering aircraft with a large industrial plant just below. A TV commentator's voice was reporting developments. Few visible signs of a tremor, he said. As you can see, the rocket plant personnel and the people of Medfield are making desperate attempts to evacuate. Fortunately, most of them have already left the immediate area. A few cars and trucks could be seen speeding along ribbon-like roads within view of the hovering television camera. Oh no, the commentator's voice broke in again. Notice that tall stack just over the plant. See how it's starting to crumble. It's beginning to crumble. This must be it. Suddenly, the whole scene seemed to explode. Plant buildings collapsed like toy houses built of cards, while at the same time huge rocks and trees were uprooted as yawning crack opened in the ground below. The three watchers in Tom's office stared in horrified dismay. But a moment later, the picture on the TV screen became jerky and distorted, then faded out completely. After a brief interval, the studio announcer came on. The relay transmitter must have been knocked out by the quake. We return you now to your regularly scheduled program, but will keep you informed as bulletins come in. Great balls of fire, Chow gulped as Tom turned off the set. I sure hope all those poor folks in their cars got away safe. Tom rushed to a wall shelf, pulled out a book on geology. He leafed quickly through a section dealing with known earthquake faults and the distribution quakes. When he looked up to the others, his face was grim. What's wrong, Skipper? Bud asked tensely. That quake, Tom answered, wasn't in a pattern zone any more than the Faber one was. Chow's jaw opened in a comic look of dismay. You mean this here old earth we live on is getting all busted up and twisted around inside? I wish I knew, Chow. Tom paced worriedly about the office. It just seems odd to me that both of these quakes should have destroyed vital defense factories. On a sudden impulse, Tom snatched up the telephone. His two companions listened as he put a call to the FBI in Washington. Within moments, a friend at the bureau, Wes Norris, came on the line. Look, Wes, Tom said, is there any chance this quake that just happened at Medfield and the earlier one at Faber Electronics might have been caused by underground H-bomb blasts? As a matter of fact, we're checking on that very possibility, Norris replied. In other words, sabotage. Things are pretty hot around here since that news on Medfield came in, so I can't talk much about it right now, Tom. But I can tell you this, Wes concluded. We are investigating, and I do mean thoroughly. Bud and Chow were shocked when Tom reported his conversation with the FBI agent. Brand my rattlesnake snoot. Chow exploded. Any ornery varmint that would cause an earthquake ought to be strung up like a hoss thief. I agree, Chow, Tom said, but how do we find out for sure? After closing time at the plant, Bud drove home with Tom. Both Mrs. Swift and Sandy were upset as the boys discussed the situation. Tom, if this is deliberate, Mrs. Swift pointed out, Enterprises may be the next on the enemy list. Tom did his best to allay his mother's fears, but inwardly he himself felt apprehensive. Any large scale sabotage plot would be almost certain to include Swift Enterprises, America's most darling and advanced research center. When his mother went upstairs to the room, Tom suggested to Bud that they drive to the nearby state police post. Here he confided his fears to Captain Rock, an old friend of the Swifts. You have some request in mind, Tom, Captain Rock inquired. How about making a search of any signs of suspicious digging or underground activity in the vicinity of Shopton? There would have to be an excavation of some sort in order to set off an underground blast. Captain Rock mulled over Tom's suggestion. Sounds like a big job, but I'm afraid you're right, Tom. We can't risk similar disaster here. We better move fast, too, Bud put in. Those two quakes, so far, are only a day apart. Rock picked up the telephone and barked out orders. Within a half hour, several carloads of troopers were covering the outlying roads that converge on Shopton. Firemen and Chief Slater's own police force were also pressed into action. They would search every cellar in town for signs of recent digging. Bud rode in one police car, Tom in another, as a house-to-house search was conducted along the highway that ran past Enterprises. At one weather-beaten house, where Bud stopped with a state trooper, an old man came to the door. What are you fellers prowling around for? He asked. Bomb emergency, the trooper said calically. We have orders to search every house cellar for underground openings. Grumbling, the old man let them enter. He followed them down a rickety stair. A moment later, Bud stumbled and gave a yell. The trooper swung around just in time to see Bud drop from view. And that were the first 4 chapters of Tom Swift and the Visitor from Planet X. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the start of a really fun book that I hope you guys are going to enjoy as we read it here on the channel. Every Sunday night, we do this. We read from the library at Banfield, and we have a lot of fun, kind of bringing back all the memories of everyone who ever went to the library and had the librarian gather them in a circle, and the librarian would, read the book and then show them the pictures from the book. No pictures with these stories, unfortunately, but a lot of good adventure, a lot of good suspense. And we'll continue that next week with the next 4 chapters of Tom Swift and the Visitor from Planet X. I'm excited to continue the show, and I appreciate everyone stopping in. As we do with our Thursday night show on Twitch, I usually throw up a final quote for the night. And this one is something we sometimes forget. With all the craziness going on in the world right now, this is for us to remember. Your job is not to judge. Your job is not to figure out if someone deserves something. Your job is to lift the fallen, to restore the broken, and to heal the hurting. These are several ideas. This was written by somebody, unknown author, and it still rings true. Good words to remember. I am Joel K. This is Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Every single Thursday night and Sunday night here on Twitch and on YouTube. And I appreciate everybody watching. We're going to get out of here. We've got to get this up and running for our friends on YouTube. And we got to get ready for next week's shows. Be well, be safe, be kind. Take care, all. We will talk to everyone and see you all next Sunday with starting chapter 5, 6, 7, and 8. Or 6. Yeah, 5, 6, 7, and 8 of the Tom Swift book that is proving to be a very intriguing story. Tom Swift and the Visitor from Planet X. Take care, all. We'll see you all next weekend or whenever you guys get a chance to watch. I am Joel K. We will see you all next week and hopefully on Thursday on Twitch as well. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.